Welcome to my channel. When a person faces an anxiety-phobic disorder, in addition to the anxiety itself, they are also troubled by the physical manifestations of this anxiety. Headaches, various sensations of pressure, tightness, distension, problems with swallowing, a lump in the throat, difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, gastrointestinal issues, problems with urination, bathroom issues, constipation, and on the other hand, diarrhea. All of these are exactly the kinds of symptoms that can simply drive a person crazy. And what's most interesting is that these symptoms are similar to the symptoms of various organic diseases. And of course, in order to rule them out, a person absolutely must undergo a medical examination. But in addition to physical sensations, there are also distressing mental states. These are obsessive thoughts, thoughts of a frightening nature. You know, it's like the feeling that the remote control for your emotions is in someone else's hands, and they're just playing around with it. For example, a person goes outside and out of nowhere suddenly starts to feel irritated. Everything completely annoys him, everything gets on his nerves. It seems like you left the house feeling normal, but now you're already feeling unwell. Or a feeling of tearfulness. He's constantly crying, feeling hurt about everything. So who turned this on? How does this happen? These kinds of problems make a person afraid of simply being in their own body. Because you realize, what about you? It seems like the control over your emotions doesn't really belong to you. And you realize that you're not the boss here, you're just some kind of user. And when a person has ruled out any organic pathologies, of course, all roads lead to a psychologist or a psychotherapist. And here, in fact, in most cases, the positive progress in treating anxiety-phobic disorders ends at this point. Why? Because most methods aimed at treating anxiety disorders don't actually eliminate what is bothering you. And that's precisely these frightening, unpleasant sensations or obsessive thoughts. Of course, you can turn to antidepressants and tranquilizers for help. Yes, they will help in that regard, but right now we're talking about self-help techniques, about psychotherapy, about how you can cope without medication. Because look, you can take medication, that's all well and good, but if we look at the causes of anxiety disorders, of course they lie in your inability to cope with stress. Is it stress or not stress? You determine this with the help of a certain set of beliefs that you have formed throughout your life. That is, you have a rule in your head about how things should be, how you see yourself, and how everyone should treat you. When this will not be fulfilled in the specific way you want, and you will likely feel increasingly tense, worried, and anxious each and every single time that your needs are not met. Of course, these beliefs need to be changed and adjusted, but until that happens, you still need to somehow cope with your current state. And that's where antidepressants and tranquilizers come to the rescue. But it turns out that even if they help you once without psychotherapy, without changing your perception and your beliefs, you will still keep falling into anxiety. Trust me on that. People who have taken medications, tranquilizers, or antidepressants in one way or another, yes, it seems like everything is fine, but after 6 months, bam, it's back again, or after a year, sometimes even sooner. In many cases, it's simply impossible to achieve a normal result. You go through different antidepressants, even though every psychotherapist praises one or another of them in some way. That's why we're not talking about medications right now. When you're tormented by these physical sensations, even though you're physically healthy and nothing is moving forward, you won't even want to listen about your own beliefs. You'll say, what beliefs do I have? My only belief is that I feel terrible right now. Right now I can't work properly, can't sleep, can't eat, can't raise my family, or rather my children. You won't even be able to earn a decent living. Why? Because I feel bad. I focus on the fact that I feel bad. And what torments me is that I feel bad. And my life is just going down the drain because I feel bad 24/7. That's what a person will tell you. And they feel bad because one way or another they have certain symptoms in their body. And these symptoms torment and exhaust the person. Or rather, it's not the symptoms themselves that exhaust a person, but the fact that they are fighting them. It would seem that if you stop fighting them, things would get easier. But how can you not fight them when they're breaking you? That's how my life goes, based on the logical chain I've just described. Look, but here it's not even just about anxiety disorders themselves. Let's take any situation, for example. You're going to the dentist. What happens to you? You start to experience an internal state that feels unbearable. And rationally, you understand that no one is going to kill you in that chair. There will be anesthetics and so on. I mean, it's not the Stone Age, but at the same time, your internal state is so awful that you simply can't endure it. It's precisely this state that prevents you from being able to go to the dentist's office. And when you do come in and sit down, it seems like there's nowhere left to run, so you end up getting that tooth treated or pulled. It's the same in a hair salon, especially for those with anxiety-phobic tendencies. You come to the hair salon, and then what? It seems like before you sit in that chair and they put the cape on you, everything is fine. But as soon as it feels like you've been tied up hand and foot, then what? A pre-panic state. Why? Because I can't run away. You'd think, where would you even run to? What do you need at home or somewhere around the corner? But you feel like you have to because the internal state is so heavy that you can't bear it and just want to run. And the most interesting thing is that everyone sits there. Very few people actually run away from the hairdresser. There are some isolated cases, but in most situations, if you've come, you sit there. I don't know, like on a date, right? You start getting nervous, tapping your feet, your hands fidget, and so on. In our lives, aside from anxiety-phobic disorders, you need to know how to keep yourself under control, because many people draw the wrong conclusions. It seems to them that it's the right thing to do, because it's the anxiety speaking for them, not themselves. Nevertheless, just look at politics. If you see a person like that, you'll say that he's kind of strange, twitchy, and that's the first thing you'll remember about him. That's exactly why, when you watch political speeches, most people behave very reservedly and don't give you any reason for your speculations. Gossip. But the reality of the situation is, no matter how you choose to sit, if someone already doesn't like a person, they will still notice even the tiniest subtle nuances in their behavior. And that's why in politics as in any public speech, when millions of people are listening to you, it's extremely difficult to find a posture that won't be discussed. And that is the reason why choosing something like this, or perhaps even like this, actually helps to keep you grounded. And even if someone says something about it, there will be very minimal comments. Why is that the case? Because such positions simply don't give any reason for it. But if it's something like this, of course, people will discuss and talk about it. You see what I mean? That's why it's very important for us to learn how to cope with this kind of anxiety, with these kinds of states before you start speaking in public. Now look, what are we coming to? What makes an anxious person twitch like this most often is internal tension. It doesn't matter. Even if I start twitching like this right now, I can do it. According to this logic, there is some kind of internal tension. Of course, that is exactly the reason why I choose not to exercise control over it. So when you think about it, our primary task here is to really learn how to avoid doing that altogether in the future, which is much harder than it sounds. And for that, you need to learn how to cope with internal tension. But how are you going to cope with it if doctors haven't helped you, and neither have all the psychotherapists with their antidepressants and tranquilizers? Why didn't they help? You don't even know yourself, because all the relief and all the recovery, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, are in your own hands. At this stage of the process, that's actually the case. And that's why your task is to learn what I'm going to suggest to you in this video. When a person, as I already mentioned, is sitting at the hairdresser's, at the dentist's, or even flying on a plane. Look, people who suffer from aerophobia or are afraid of closed spaces, it doesn't matter, people who are afraid of everything in general. Most often they're not actually afraid that the plane will crash. In most cases, and I constantly work with people who have phobias, all sorts of phobias. Very few people are actually afraid that the plane will crash. Very often, when you look online, you see things like, according to statistics, planes are this and that, they're the safest. But none of my clients ever ask about that. All my clients, without exception, say, I just can't handle it. It's this internal state that arises in me when I'm on a plane. That's exactly why I don't want to fly. That's where the real issue lies. I can't do it. I'm afraid of getting stuck in an elevator, even though I understand there's ventilation and you won't suffocate. But it's this nightmarish feeling. I just can't endure it. It will completely wear me out. Even if I survive, I'll never get into that elevator again in my life. You see, because of such mistaken perceptions of one's own condition, a conditioned reflex is formed. And a person really no longer wants to, and sometimes simply cannot, go to these places. That's why our task is to form a different behavior. Look, if we carefully consider the specific way that conditioned reflexes are generally reinforced over time, the fundamental mistake people make when trying to get rid of them is that you simply don't do anything new or different to replace them. You are constantly following your own bodily sensations of discomfort. Let me explain. If I am feeling anxious right now, no matter the reason, maybe because of a presentation, or I have some real problems, or I don't know, my butt itches. And at the same time, there is discomfort. This tension results in inappropriate behavior. A person starts tapping on the table, doing something, picking up a pencil, doing something like that, dancing, and so on. So this kind of commotion begins. That's what happens. And of course, it's not very pleasant to watch. It would be silly to draw any conclusions about me right now if I behave like this, because it would still be wrong. You don't know why I'm twitching like this. Maybe I have problems so serious that you would have already hanged yourself. And I start acting like this. So it turns out I can't handle my inner discomfort, and it spills out. I'm naturally releasing this tension. Some kind of physical activity. That's exactly why when you're anxious you start fidgeting for no reason. You can't pull yourself together in the room. That's right. Why can't you pull yourself together? Because you lack that skill. Anyone can pull themselves together, literally, in any of the situations I've listed, but only if they develop this skill. So how do you develop this skill? Actually, that's why we're making this video. How do you develop this skill? Look, imagine how terrifying it would be if I tied you up and laid you on the floor. I don't know, chained you to a radiator and left you sitting there. What would happen? There would be panic, there would be hysteria. A person would just start convulsing. Why? Because they were forced to spend a little time with their own inner state? Isn't that right? When you ask a child not to move, how long can they last? Just a couple of seconds. Because there's inner tension, energy, all of it is bursting out. Emotions are overflowing, thoughts are constantly spinning in their head, because there's this to do and that and something else. And a person can't sit still because they lack this skill. Only someone who has this skill can sit calmly like that. And your task is to use a certain trick that I will suggest to you. To become a hostage to your own discomfort, but with a slightly different, let's say, approach. You've already been a hostage to your own discomfort since the moment you realized you had an anxiety disorder. You're already a hostage to your own disorder. When you speak in public, you're afraid. When you go on a date, you're afraid. When you go to the hairdresser, you're afraid. That's it. You're already a hostage to your own bodily sensations, and I suggest getting rid of them. How? By changing your perception and your sensitivity threshold. And for that, you need to do my original exercise. You probably won't find this exercise anywhere else. It's only available from me. Or rather, it used to be just in my head. And in the practice, I offer to my clients. Well, now, I guess everyone will know about it since I'm sharing it right here in this video. Our task, starting today, even from this very minute, is to do the exercise which is called the hostage. What do you need for this? First, you will need to sit down in a comfortable armchair or on a chair at a table. Next, place both of your feet, it doesn't matter if you're wearing shoes or not, firmly on the floor, and then carefully put your palms flat on the table. After that, it's best to sit up straight. We need to perform a very simple yet extremely challenging action. For this task, we must not move at all. Ideally, you shouldn't move any part of your body whatsoever, not a single limb, not even your head, and you should remain perfectly still and completely motionless throughout the entire process. Our task is to sit up straight. And for those who are more advanced, this means not moving your eyes, not looking around, but staring straight ahead. But that's for anxious people. At the first stage, it will be a little difficult. Your task is to sit like this and not move. Start with 5 minutes and work up to 20. Do this at least once a day. You'll see that you'll get results after just the first 5 minutes. For anxious people, by the way, this will be a very good test for those prone to panic. Believe me, after the first 2 minutes, you'll start to feel a pre-panic state. just after 2 minutes of not moving. For example, if I sit like I am now, I don't move, I look at one spot, and I don't move any part of my body. And you'll notice that you'll start to feel twisted up inside, won't you? It's like being in a tunnel where your internal tension starts sending you signals, like move your hand, your leg, your head. Don't move your head. You can't move your head, but your head will really want to turn. You'll start to feel internal tension, even up to a state of panic. Your task is not to give in to these provocations. We just keep sitting, continuing with this practice. Sit until your allotted time is up. For convenience, you can set a countdown timer on your smartphone, and once you start moving your limbs, everything feels completely normal after 5 to 20 minutes of this practice. Only after this will you understand what it means to accept your internal sensations. Only after this will you truly understand how you should relate to your own discomfort. At this moment, you can think about whatever you want. You can think about something scary or something good. It doesn't matter. Our only task is simply not to move, and that alone will be more than enough. To create tension for yourself, you can breathe quickly or you can breathe slowly, but remember one thing. If you breathe quickly, you will cause hyperventilation and make your condition worse. If you breathe slowly, on the contrary, you will activate the parasympathetic nervous system and your condition will become more stable. If you breathe slowly while in this position, you will achieve a comfortable state of well-being without movement much faster than someone who breathes quickly. It's up to you to decide. Our task is to accept our internal state no matter what happens without panic. So you sit and observe. Anxiety, you sit and observe. Discomfort, your nose itches, you sit and observe. Something is ringing, clanging, some kind of internal dialogue is happening. Just observe, do nothing. Your only task is to endure these 5 to 20 minutes, and after this time has passed, you come out of this agonizing trance, and lo and behold, what happens is that you no longer want to move quickly or run. You don't feel like rushing around, you feel like joking and saying, you feel like calling an ambulance. You don't want to do anything because you've already regained a bit of your health. You have successfully recharged yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically as well. If you truly learn, if you really take the time to learn how to do what I am talking about here, and if you consistently practice it, you can actually make this a permanent part of your daily life and your routine. Practice this when you're sitting and talking with someone, when you meet up with friends, or when you communicate with your loved ones, your relatives, and even with your children. Practice this, and you will see that very soon, despite your anxious symptoms, and right now I'm talking about people with anxiety, phobic and panic conditions, with such severe distressing symptoms, you will see that this practice helps you observe your well-being without doing anything. And within a limited period of time, you allow your well-being to worsen. And ultimately, after 20 minutes, you will see that you start to feel comfortable. And you will develop tolerance for discomfort. Your sensitivity threshold will change. Very soon you will stop feeling those tormenting, strange bodily sensations that are currently driving you crazy. But you won't achieve this result if you just do it once, right now. And then stop there. Listen, you will never recover if you keep doing it that way. Our task is to form a new alternative behavior regarding your anxiety and symptoms. You haven't done this before, which is why you've always had the same result as before. In other words, no result at all. In order to change your perception and eliminate conditioned reflexes, we need to change your behavior. New behavior, this will simply form what was there before, and new neural connections will be created. You will gain the ability to remain calm and control your inner tension, even when it becomes overwhelming. Even when you're shaking and your heart is beating rapidly and it's tormenting you, with this kind of practice, you'll soon be able to accept it and won't give in to these provocations. The heart, which will beat rapidly, your blood pressure will rise, there will be tremors in your body, it will make me do this, no matter what, because this needs to be released. And you have to match this. And that's why an anxious person, in principle, always behaves like this, like an anxious person, because they give in to provocation. A calm person practices calmness within themselves. You see, you'll be like Buddha under the tree, right? How much did he get shaken up there? I think quite a lot. So you are like Buddha. You will sit until you achieve enlightenment. Your task is, for a limited amount of time, to observe the tension and do nothing. That's exactly why we start with a small amount of time, with 5 minutes. That is more than enough to start. Do it once. Go ahead and do 5 minutes right now. Here it is, my friends, the most anxiety-inducing part. Do it right now with a timer. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Do the practice. And write in the comments what happened, what sensations you had at the beginning, what you felt at the end, what you wanted to do, and in general, how the whole experience was for you. I think there will be a lot of new, interesting sensations. So I highly recommend that you do this specific exercise called hostage every single day. By doing so, you will finally stop being a helpless hostage to your own overwhelming bodily sensations and physical feelings. And you will realize that in any life situation, even if you're shaking like crazy, you can still behave absolutely normally, without trembling or giving people any reason to think things or make strange assumptions. Do you understand? If you do, then I wish everyone good luck and good health, and I look forward to your comments about this practice. Bye-bye.